But I want to talk just really quickly about phase 2, which we're planning on launching this September. This is in partnership with the LGS Foundation, NORD, which is the National Organization of Rare Disorders, and the FDA, and also another institute the FDA works with called the Critical Path Institute. And very specifically, this phase is caregiver-entered survey data under something called an IRB protocol, Institutional Review Board protocol. And so the questions that we're asking are questions that have been really brought together by caregivers for caregivers. And doctors has also weighed in on this. We have a rare advisory board with caregivers, with scientists, with doctors, to say, what do we want to ask our community? And this is a 5-year-long study that we got funding for to work with NORD to create this caregiver-entered survey data. And the first survey that we're going to be launching is really to understand who you guys are in our community. You know, what has been your journey? What seizure types are you living with? What medicines? And then we're also going to add a piece to this where we look at very specific questions around sleep, for example, perhaps some information about what it looks like when somebody with LGS begins to age and get older. What can we, and one of the biggest questions we get is what can we expect? And then finally, we really want to begin to ask questions that might be useful to the FDA in clinical trials, because as you saw today, any of these clinical trials are very, very rigorous, and filling out data for 2 years is really, really hard. And in some ways, they're collecting data for the first time when they do a trial, but if we could have this data ready for them, then oftentimes the data that's collected in these studies can be used as the placebo arm of a clinical trial, and then you don't have to have the people who are receiving, you know, the sugar pill side of a trial fill all of this information out. We know what the changes we're expecting. So the NORD registry has been around for 10 years, and there's a lot of different rare diseases that are a part of this I Am Rare platform that we're going to be on, and they've enrolled many, many patients so far in this. And I think they represent, I want to say it's about 75 different diseases. It's going to be really easy to use. We're going to roll out the first year surveys in probably a bundle of 6 different surveys that will take you each 10 minutes to fill out if we do it right. And you can always start it and come back and finish it. And we think that at the end of this, we'll be able to answer some really specific questions. For example, like who in this community has all of the check boxes for LGS versus who checks some of the check boxes, like who's a peach, who's an apricot, and who's a nectarine, right? And I think that's important for some reason. So if we ever start creating medicines that target the EEG and LGS, that'll be open to people who have that. But as we're creating medicines for people who have seizures, that's all of us, right? And so I think it's really important to know. I think we can also get a really good sense of what type of sleep issues we're dealing with, behaviors, feeding issues that we're dealing with. And again, if you can't measure something scientifically, then it doesn't exist and you can't improve it. But most importantly, I think we can begin to start answering these questions. If any of you guys have done a clinical trial, the questions that really matter to us. And there's a whole bunch of surveys out there called PROMIS surveys that have been validated by the FDA and looked at as being useful in clinical trials, but they often don't get chosen. And we get a chance to take a look at those and choose. And then we as patient families can fill those out. Short survey, 10 questions on sleep, for example. And we can fill it out, you know, now, and we can fill it out again in 6 months, and we can fill it out again 6 months from now. And I think it takes some of the guessing game out, because each time a clinical trial is done or a clinical research study is done, it's the investigators that decide what's going to be asked. It's not the patient families. And here's a chance for investigators, medical professionals, the FDA, and the people that all work in this to come together and decide what we'll ask. So it's going to be a 5-year study. Prader-Willi has done one of these, and they've been able to generate some really fantastic data. So they started their registry in the early 2000s. They have about 1,800 people. They've been able to break down which country everybody is in, and the current ages and sort of what sort of genetic changes are in those people. But they've also been able to characterize the exact type of GI issues, right? So I don't think GI issues have been looked at all in LGS, and I'm pretty sure every single one of our loved ones is experiencing constipation, troubles, with gut health, troubles with, feeding, right? I mean, and all of that is sort of related to GI. So they've really been able to break this down and identify what the the issue is through their caregiver entered surveys. They've also been able to break down when the milestones were hit with these surveys, right? So when did they walk? When did they talk? Did they ever talk? And trying to get some of this information out there and characterizing the developmental milestones. And so if you look at patients and families, with LGS, people who have LGS often don't meet their milestones on time. And a measure of improvement is, as new meds come out, if as a whole we start meeting milestones earlier and earlier, we know that these medicines are working. And I think all of us right now are running around going, what are we doing with all of these medicines? What is the net benefit to our population? Is this even helpful? Should we even be doing this? And so milestones would be a great way to measure progress, I think. And even though our kids mostly make inchstones and milestones, it's something important that we can measure. They've also looked at sleep and really highlighted what the areas of need are in sleep so they can fund grants specifically around the sleep topics that are most prominent and of most interest to people. They've also looked at behavior and mental health, who's on what therapies. I can't identify anywhere in the literature where it tells me everything that our community is on. Right? Like I know my daughter's on, this many anti-seizure therapies, but what about the psych therapies? What about the GI therapies? What about the sleep therapies, right? What about all the other therapies that are not medicative therapies? We don't have any of that information. And, we need to understand how all those drug-drug interactions are working. And then finally, living situation. What does happen when you get kicked out of the school system at 22? Where do these people with LGS live? What are they doing? Are they staying home? How are they spending their day? What obstacles are they facing, right? And so I think it's really important for us to understand that, because if we can't understand it, where are we going to even begin to make it better? And so this is an endeavor that we've been working for a really long time on. We've been asking many people to come in and do this for us, and finally just decided that we needed to do this as a community. So we hope you'll participate in the surveys when they come out. Like I said, we're going to try to make them simple, 6 surveys a year, each survey being about 10 minutes. Maybe there will be a 7th survey in there. And then, and then waiting for the data to come back and share it. And we'll use this to guide our research strategies moving forward. We're in month 6 of building this registry. We're right at this point where we've almost identified the surveys that we're going to be using. They're being vetted and looked at by the families and our advisory board. And we'll be launching this in September. I want to say it's September 9th, so it's just around the corner. But that is our phase 2, and it's our chance to raise our voice and say, this is what is important to us. This is what we want studied, and this is how we want it studied. And we designed this together, not just patients saying this is how we're going to do it and you're going to listen to us, but together with researchers and with medical practitioners and with the FDA. So it's going to be really exciting to have that, and that'll be our phase 2, and we hope that we get over 1,000 family members across a 3-year period to enroll in this. It's going to be really incredible to be able to take these data, share them with our partners that are out there trying to improve medical treatment, trying to do research, and so we hope that you'll participate.